A soft-spoken introvert. Emily Dickinson was a soft-spoken introvert who had her own ideas and opinions about a range of subjects like religion, science, and mortality. Her acquaintances described her way of speaking as soft and childlike. She was able to talk for hours at times when her willingness permitted her to do so. In those rare occasions, her witty remarks and thoughtful opinions became apparent to her visitors. When a Civil War veteran officer came to see her, Emily struck up a conversation with him. Her spirited conversation was so full of vigor that it exhausted the officer. Later that day, he wrote a letter to his wife saying that he could not keep up with Emily during their conversation. Joys of language. As a student, Emily loved learning and was a studious learner. She always had a dictionary by her side and went over the origins and alternate meanings of words so that she could use them in unique ways. Her early compositions received praise from her teachers and she anonymously published them in student publications. She read literature for its deep ideas and liked the English language for its precision. Her affinity towards writers such as Browning, Bronte, and Shakespeare shaped her as a writer. She read the daily newspaper and possessed a well-informed mind. She also read the popular novels of the time and discussed them with her family members. Her favorite novelists of the time were Bronte, Dickens, and Hawthorne. Commitment to writing. She settled into a routine when she became a spinster living in her father's house. She committed herself to writing and stayed up late in her room composing her poetry. Her acquaintances and family members were aware of her interest in writing. She expressed her own definition of poetry in a letter she wrote to Thomas W. Dickinson. She said, "If I read a book and it makes my whole body so cold no fire can warm me, I know that is poetry. If I feel physically as if the top of my head were taken off, I know that is poetry. These are the only way I know it. Is there any other way?" She found joy in language and wrote poetry only when she felt the need to write. Death as a mystery. Emily witnessed unexpected deaths and illnesses around her, which were common occurrences during her lifetime in the 19th century. The literal meaning of death, along with its different connotations, remained a mystery to her. As a result, death became a prominent theme in her poetry. She wrote 500 poems which dealt with the theme of death. Death appears as a coachman, a king, a lover, a murderer, and a wild beast in her poems. Her analysis of death is considered as an invaluable contribution to American literature. Signs of agoraphobia. Emily refused to leave her house, which can be seen as a sign of agoraphobia. In her letter to Thomas Higginson on May 11, 1869, she declined his invitation to visit him in Boston because she could not leave her father's grounds and go to any house or town. She refused to publish her poems because she considered publication as an auction of the mind, which is also a proof of her agoraphobia. She locked herself in her room on the upper floor of her house and listened to the conversations that happened down below her. She chose to engage with her visitors on some occasions and would send flowers, cards, and poems on a tray to the visitors whom she did not want to see so that they would not feel offended. A work in progress manuscript. Emily's sister discovered her poems after her death in 1886 and decided to publish her poems. Emily Dickinson's original manuscripts were transcribed by hand and were released after her death. She did not give titles or dates to her poems and did not arrange her poetry in a logical order. The early editors had difficulties in finding a way to publish her poems that would uphold the respect and meaning of her poetry. They were unable to publish her original manuscript without tampering with them. Issues such as what poems to include, how to arrange those poems, and what to correct or change in those poems are issues that continue to persist even to this day. The original manuscript contains crossed out words with many word variants and inconsistent line breaks that exist between different versions of the same poem. The editors had to arrange her poems, add a sequence to them, and make critical judgments about the issues and inconsistencies found in her collection. Therefore, Dickinson's original manuscript will forever exist as a work in progress.